So this week we're looking at chapter 25, 26, and 27. 25 is understanding attitudes. Although we might use the term different in our everyday life, hey, he's really a good attitude. Social psychologists reserve the term attitude to refer to relatively during evaluation of something where something's called the attitude object. The attitude object might be a person, a product, or social group. When we say that attitudes or evaluations, we mean that they involved a preference for against the attitude object or commonly expressed in terms like refer, like, dislike, hate, and love. When we express our attitude, for instance, we say, I like swimming, or I hate snakes, or I love my parents. We're expressing the relationship, either positive or negative, between self and attitude object. Statements such as these make it clear that attitudes are an important part of self concept. Every human being holds thousands of attitudes, including those about family and friends, political figures, abortion rights, terrorism, preference for music, much more. Each of our attitudes has a unique characteristics, and no two attitudes come as influence in quite the same way. Research has found that some of our attitudes are inherited, at least in part, via genetic transmission from our parents. Other attitudes are learned mostly through direct and indirect experiences with attitude objects. Purpose of attitudes. Human beings hold attitudes because they're useful. Particularly, our attitudes enable us to be determined, often very quickly or effortlessly, which behaviors engage, in which people approach or avoid, or even promote products to buy. Duttwerk, Barg, Garcia, and Chackin, 2002, and Mayo and Olson, 2000. You can imagine that making quick decisions about what to avoid or approach has substantial value in our own evolutionary experience. For example, snake is bad, run away, blueberry is good, you can eat them. Attitudes are important because they are frequently or not always predict behavior. If you know a person has more positive attitude toward Frosted Flakes than Cheerios, then you would naturally predict that they will buy more of the former when they get the market. We know that Amira is madly in love with Leah, then we will not be surprised when she proposes marriage. Because attitudes often predict behavior, people who wish to change behavior frequently try to change attitudes. They use persuasive communication. ABC of attitudes. Our attitudes are made up of cognitive, affective, and behavioral components. Consider an environmentalist attitude toward recycling, which is probably very positive. In terms of effect, they feel happy when they recycle. In terms of behavior, they regularly recycle their bottles and cans. In terms of cognition, they believe recycling is a responsible thing to do. The image below shows how a person's positive attitude towards composting can be comprised of strong alignment among other feelings towards composting. Effect. Their actions when it comes to composting behavior. Their thoughts about composting knowledge. ABCs of attitudes. Attitude, overall evaluation toward composting. Effective feelings and emotions. Composting is important to me. Behavioral, past and future. Actively, I compose wherever I go. Cognitive thoughts and beliefs. Composting reduces CO2 emissions. Response hierarchies, which comes first. Although most attitudes are determined by affect, behavior, and cognition, there's nevertheless variability in the regard towards people and across attitudes. Some attitudes are more likely based on feelings. Some are likely to be used on behaviors, and some are more likely to be used based on beliefs. For example, your attitude toward chocolate ice cream is probably determined in large part by affect. Although you can describe the taste, mostly you just want to like it. We have cognition affect behavior. Or we can have BAC, back, behavior affect cognition, or maybe ABC, affect behavior cognition. Okay, so high could be like vacation, wedding dress, car. Those are things you really have to think about. Low would be like car wash, tin foil, vacuum cleaner. Sometimes when you go to a store, you make a list of things to get. An impulse, maybe face mask, candles, computer games. A lot of those things can be right by the checkout. Sometimes we have gum and candy, but face masks during COVID, those were everywhere. So usually you grab them, not an impulse really, but because you need them or you can't go in stores. Not all attitudes are the same. The ABCs could be affect, behavior, and cognition. They all align together. Other attitudes are less strong because their affective, cognition, behavioral components are each somewhat different. Your cognitions toward physical exercise may be positive. You may believe physical activity is good for your health. On the other hand, you affect to be negative. You may resist exercising because you prefer to engage in tasks that provide more immediate rewards. Consequently, you may not exercise as often as you believe you ought to. These conscious necessities among components of your attitude make it less strong than it would be if all the components lined up together. Principle of attitude consistency, that any given attitude, object, or ABC's affect, behavior, and cognition are normally in line with each other, thus predicts that attitudes, for instance, are measured via self-report measure and are likely to guide behavior. Norms can have a powerful influence on consumers' attitudes and behaviors. Norms define how to behave in accordance with society, and it defined as right, important, and most members of societies adhere to them. Formal norms are established, written rules. They are behaviors worked out and agreed upon the order to suit and serve most people. Laws are formal norms and employee manuals, college entrance exam requirements, and no running signs at swimming pools. We have social norms, those accepted group rules and standards that guide our behavior without force of law. We can think of norms as representing what we ought to do and the correct thing to do. They're accepted way of thinking, feeling, and behaving that support groups. We have subjective norms that refers to a degree of social pressure an individual feels regarding the performance or non-performance of specific behavior. Subjective norms are influenced by one's perception of beliefs based on parents, friends, partners, acquaintances, and colleagues. Descriptive norms are defined as perception that people do in given situation. Most of us, most of the time, are motivated to do the right thing. If society deems that we put litter in proper container, speak softly in libraries, and tip our waiter, then that's what most of us will do. But sometimes it's not clear that society expects of us. In these situations, we often rely on descriptive norms. Researchers have demonstrated the power of descriptive norms in a number of areas. How descriptive norms mislead us. It's not always easy to obtain good descriptive norm information, which we sometimes rely on flawed notion of the norm when deciding how we should behave. A good example of misperceived norms can lead to problems found in the research of binge drinking among college students. Excessive drinking is a serious problem in many campuses. There may be reasons why students binge drink, but this is most important in the perception of a descriptive norm. How much drinks highly correlated with how much they believe an average student drinks. Fortunately, students aren't always good at making an assessment. They notice the boisterous heavy drinking in the party, but fail to consider all the students not attending the party. As a result, students typically overestimate a descriptive norm of students drinking. Most students believe they consume significantly less alcohol than the norm. Miscalculation creates a dangerous push towards more and more excessive alcohol consumption. A positive sign, providing students with accurate information about drinking norms has been found to reduce indulgent drinking. A theory of planned behavior is developed by Martin Fisher and Isaac Jason, outlines three variables that affect the attitude-behavior relationship. The attitude toward behavior, stronger the better. Subjective norms that support the value. Perceived behavior control the extent to which we believe we actually perform a behavior. 4 functional theories of attitude. What is the most beneficial things attitude can do? An efficient knowledge function allows us to understand and sense the world. Our attitude serves ego defense function, which help us cover up things that we do not like about ourselves, or we can categorize some of the attitudes, individual tools that lead us to greater rewards or help us avoid punishments. The final function centers around the idea that their attitudes to help express other people, value expressive function. Here's a little chart here showing you the multi-attribute model. Then we have multi-attribute model used to evaluate laptop computers, showing Apple MacBooks as a favorite. Okay, time for a video. Consumer behaviors. TED Talk. I get commercials.
You can't count on the weather, but you can count on dinner.
Good morning. Thank you, Andrea. And first I want to say congratulations to everybody on the TEDx team who pulled this all together. What an amazing event. So kudos to the team. There's it's really fun to watch these guys behind the scenes hustling and getting everything going so that they can put on a flawless performance. So it's great to be here. I call my talk today The Blurring of the Screens, because in the past 3 years with the iPad, the smartphones, I mean, how many people have their phone with them today? How many have more than one device? Okay, this is phenomenally different than what it was 3 years ago. And this dramatic shift in the devices that we have available for us is, we haven't seen this type of shift in the consumption of media behavior since the 1950s, quite honestly, when the TV first turned on. And most of you in this room have always had the TV. In fact, you don't have the luxury of the time where you actually had to get off the couch to go change the channel, right? But because of this dramatic shift, we're consuming media so much differently than we have in the past. And this is really important to marketers. I work with a lot of CPG companies, consumer packaged good companies, so the Procter & Gamble's, the General Mills's of the world, and I always like to tell them, your consumer has already left the building as far as where they're getting their media, and they don't really care if you follow them or not. Our advertisers need to think differently about how they market to today's consumer when we're getting our media across a bunch of different devices. So this is Eric Schmidt, who is our Google chairman, and this is a conference that he spoke in back in 2010. And he put up this slide called Mobile First. And why mobile first? Well, Google makes more than 90% of our revenue on those little text ads on google.com that people say they never click on, but somebody is clicking on them. And anyway, if we don't have the vision to look ahead to know that our consumers' habits are changing onto mobile, then that's going to hold us back from continuing our progress as a company. And so when he says mobile first, that means that every product that comes out of Mountain View at Google, whether it's an enhancement to Google Maps or the new Google Drive, the first thing they ask is, what is the mobile application? Because we can't continue just to create things for the desktop when the consumer has so many other devices at their disposal. Google also owns YouTube, which is the largest video platform. And why this is so important, especially when we put on the lens of a marketer, is that in 2015, more than 80% of the time spent on the internet will be watching video. YouTube alone commands more than 10% of all the broadband because of so much video watching. And this is important because your habits have changed. Video is on demand. It's no longer I have to be home at 7 o'clock to watch the Big Brother episode, right? You watch it whenever you want on whatever device you want. In fact, most of you in this room will never own a Comcast cable or an AT&T cable subscription. Why? You've got Netflix, you've got YouTube, you've got Hulu. Who needs to have a cable subscription? You'll never have that intimate relationship that I have with my Comcast provider, where I unplug the box, plug it back in, sit there for 45 seconds of awkward silence, and then they finally dispatch a Comcast guy to my house. But it's good. You'll miss it. YouTube, over 500 million monthly users. If YouTube was a country, it'd be the third largest country. 48 hours of content uploaded every minute, 3 billion global views per day, and 20 minutes on average spent there. People get to YouTube and they're having a good time, right? And it's not just cats on skateboards anymore. There's a lot of good quality talent out there. And so one of the things that we at Google work to do, and I have some colleagues in the audience here, we educate our marketers on how do you adapt your programming when you're so used to TV for the most part as a means to get to your consumer. How do you adapt in this world? And so what we did was a project called Rebrief. Here we go. And this was a project to help our marketers start to think differently about, if you looked at iconic campaigns from the past, what would those look like in today's world where you have this technology at your disposal?
Teach the world to sing with me.
In Project Rebrief, we've reimagined Coca-Cola's classic Hilltop commercial for a modern audience in the digital age. In the spirit of the original ad, it allows users to connect with strangers by sending a Coke around the globe to an unsuspecting recipient, making the world feel just a little bit smaller. The ad can be experienced on mobile phone apps in Google's AdMob network across iOS and Android devices. Made possible through AdMob-rich media ads, coupled with custom-designed vending machines, viewers can truly buy the world of Coke with a few taps on their mobile phones. A viewer can decide where to send a Coke by selecting one of many machines located around the world, from New York City to Cape Town to Buenos Aires. They can then add a custom text message to personalize their Coke delivery. Google Translate converts these messages on the fly, breaking down the language barrier across countries. A dynamic video with Google Maps, Street View, and composite motion graphics shows the Coke's journey from the viewer's current location to the vending machine across the globe. Users can then wait for confirmation of their Coke's delivery or enter an email address to be notified later. Once the Coke is delivered, recipients are not only treated to the generosity of a stranger thousands of miles away, but they can also say thanks by sending a message of their own back to the user. That message is then delivered to the user's inbox, where they can read the note and view a video clip of the recipient's surprised reaction upon getting a free Coke. A gallery showcases some of our favorite shareable exchanges between people around the world connecting over a can of Coke.
Thank you. That's the best Coke I've ever had.
Today's technology allows us to make good on a promise Coca-Cola made over 40 years ago and lets users buy the world of Coke from the palm of their hand.
Isn't that cool? So it's really thinking differently about how to use technology. And so a lot of advertisers right now are thinking, well, oh my God, I don't know how to make that shift. But the progressive ones are having a really good time at it. So let's take a look back. 35% of the household back in the 80s, if you were a marketer, you knew you could catch 35% of those people if you were watching, if you advertised on the Cosby Show. Today's top ad, or NCIS, only gets 8%. The market is so fragmented. How do you reach those folks today? Angry Birds. 9 out of 10 phones are sold with smartphones, and tablets are up 4 times. 125 years of Angry Birds played every single day. That is a lot of angry people. 93%, which is, so 93% of us with our smartphones, we use our smartphones to get on the internet every single day. 5 times growth in search. So again, mobile search is growing dramatically. And in fact, what we're finding now is 20% of searches are now done on a mobile phone. And yet we work with advertisers, I'm not making this up, we work with advertisers who say, well, you know what, mobile is part of my 2014 plan. And I'm like, you're kidding me. So 20% of the searches are coming from a mobile phone, yet you have an 800 number. That's like saying every 5th call, don't answer on an 800 number, right? So it's just, it's amazing, the growth of it today. 92% of users seek local information. So 1 in 5 searches on desktop Google.com, it has a local intent. 1 in 3 on a mobile phone, because you got your phone, you want to know right away. And 89% of those folks take action. 59% use it in holiday shopping, and more than 30% of searches on Google.com on Black Friday came from a mobile phone. So as a marketer, yeah, I need to be there. Mobile will become our wallet. And why is that? Our studies have shown that you will figure out that your mobile phone is missing before you figure out your wallet or your child is missing. And with these new devices, it actually increases because we're always connected, right? So what's really interesting is the growth of tablet, especially in the evening. So again, for marketers, this means I have to figure out what my consumer is doing and make sure that I'm there to communicate with them. 10.7, this number is the number of references people use on average to make a purchase decision. And this isn't just what restaurant I'm going to go to tonight or what vacuum I want to buy. This is what hair shampoo will not make my hair frizzy. 10.7 sources before they make an everyday purchase. And that's up from 5.3 a year ago. Why? Because I have it there. I want to get the best deal. I know how to do it. I have technology. So the traditional mode of marketing was the stimulus, the TV commercial, or the billboard. The first moment of truth, I got to the shelf, I found what I wanted. And then the second moment of truth, I got the shampoo home, it made my hair frizzy, or it didn't. What's changed is consumer habits. Now, if you look at this, 82% use the internet to find information, right? And so what that's created is what we call this new zero moment of truth, is this moment we're looking at the computer or our phone or wherever ahead of time before making that purchase. Marketers now have to win that moment of truth in addition to the other places. And the majority of still spend most of their resources against the traditional side of things. And online wins the moments that matter. So if you look at this from awareness, familiarity, consideration, selection, and loyalty, only TV wins in awareness. So still important. I'm not saying that, I don't want to walk away saying no more TV. TV is still very important, especially from awareness. But you've got to win some of these other places that people are making their decisions. So I like to say get going or get left behind. Am I really connecting with my audience? So if I'm a marketer, put my marketing hat on, am I really connecting with them? You look at this TEDx group, they did a lot of marketing online to reach the savvy consumer. Am I leveraging test and learn capabilities that are available to the digital internet? In fact, it was really interesting. We have a new VP of marketing at YouTube, and he came from Procter & Gamble, a very successful CPG company. And when Larry, our CEO, asked him, he said, Lucas, what are you most proud of in your career, your successful career at Procter & Gamble? And Lucas said, hey, I always landed the plane. I ran 15 different brands from Tide to Pampers, and I always landed the plane. And Larry took a step back and looked at him, and he said, well, then you obviously weren't taking enough risks. Really. Because that's the way we have to think today, and digital allows that. You can put messages out there, test them, pull them, learn from them. You don't have to be perfect. At Google, we call it fail fast. And projects don't fail, we sunset them. So, and then, am I leading my organization, and am I teaching us to be a leader versus a follower? Back to my mobile example. Oh, we'll get to mobile in 2014. Well, good luck with that. We actually did a study of TV and internet. So again, I'm saying, it's a yes and world. So when we worked with T-Mobile on a campaign, we did TV and only in some markets, and then TV and video. And in the markets where we did TV and video, we found a 4 increase in reach points, 2 times in frequency, and 73% in efficiency. And that's important, because guess what? The internet is pretty darn efficient. You can be very targeted, and it's a lot cheaper in most cases than running TV. was going to set up that video. I'd clicked on very quick, but Daniel Lee is actually a Google engineer writing code out in Mountain View. And so that was a real life story of what he was doing to connect with, with his young daughter. And I use that as an example of the way that Google views advertising to a certain extent. That's an online video ad, but it also has run on TV a little bit. And Google is a very big brand, but we don't necessarily advertise like a Chevrolet or a Coca-Cola. A lot of it is a little bit more subtle. And really what advertising gets to is it's all about the storytelling. It's all about the bonding, the engagement. So the insight is still just as important today as it was back in '71 when Harvey Gawar came up with I Want to Buy the World a Coke. Still very important, but the way to tell those stories is changing. And that's just an example of, wow, this is how he's using Gmail. This is a great way for us to tell the world about here's another way to use Gmail, for example. And I guess lastly, what I would say is in working with a lot of our large advertisers, I met with one of the chief marketing officers for a major CPG company based in Cincinnati, and he had his presidents around the table, and we were talking about digital, and they were coming up with all the barriers, and this is a couple years ago, but all the barriers about why they weren't doing more search, for example, or video, or just digital in general, and why more budgets, even though consumer habits and time spent on TV had shifted to digital, why they hadn't moved more in that direction. And they had a lot of barriers. We can't measure it the same way. You can't use the same creative. They just had excuse after excuse. And finally he stood up, and he was new in his role. And he said, we are at the forefront of a change in consumer behavior that we have not seen since the 1950s and TV. And in the 1950s and TV, we didn't stand back and say, oh, let's be a slow follower and see if this thing sticks. No, we jumped in with both feet, even creating our own TV show, which was a soap opera at the time. He said, we cannot be followers in this medium or we will lose. And so he challenged them to lean in and start figuring it out and get in there with both feet so that you can at least start to measure these things and better understand it. And fast forward to today, this particular company is one of the most progressive in this space. If you look at their Thanks Mom type of stuff that's coming up for the Olympics, it's very, very innovative, and it is cross-platform. So that's the main message I want to leave you with, is that as you go on with your careers, as you work with your companies, think about taking risks, about leading in and being a leader in this space, because the world has definitely shifted. Thank you.
All right, so now we're looking at changing attitudes. So every day we're bombarded with different advertisements, and we watched a video right now on TED Talk about consumer behaviors. The goal of these ads is to sell cars, computers, video games, clothes, or even political candidates. Ads appear on billboards and website, pop-up ads, buses, TV infomercials, and you name it. It has been estimated that 500 billion spent annually on advertising worldwide. There's substantial evidence that advertising is effective in changing attitude. After the R.J. Reynolds Company started airing its Joe Camel ads for cigarettes on TV in 1980, Camel cigarette sales to children increased dramatically. But persuasion can also have positive outcomes. For instance, a review of research literature indicates that mass media for anti-smoking campaigns are associated with reduced smoking rates among both children and youth. Persuasion is also used to encourage people to donate to charities, causes, and volunteer to give blood and engage in healthy behaviors. So it's not always bad. Persuasion is defined as a process by which the message introduces change in beliefs and attitudes and behaviors. Persuasion can take many forms. It may, for example, differ in whether it targets public compliance or private acceptance. In short term or long term, whether it involves slowly escalating comments or sudden interventions, and most of all, in benevolence of intentions. Elaboration likelihood model. An especially popular model would describe the dynamics of persuasion and elaboration likelihood model persuasion. Elaboration model considers the variables of attitude change approach, that is, features of the source, a persuasive message. Contents of the message and characteristics of the audience are used to determine when attitude change will occur. According to elaboration likelihood model persuasion, there are two main routes that play a role in delivering a persuasive message: central and perceptual. Of elaboration likelihood model, central versus perceptual roads of the persuasion. Central road: audience, processing, and persuasion. Central road is logical driven and uses data and facts to convince people of an argument worthiness. For example, if a car company is seeking to persuade you to purchase their model, will emphasize the car's safety features and fuel economy. This is a direct route to persuasion that focuses the quality of information. In order for the central route of persuasion to be effective in changing attitude and thoughts and behaviors, the argument must be strong and, if successful, will result in lasting attitude change. Central route to persuasion works best when the targeted persuasion, where the audience is analytical and willing to engage in processing information. For the advertiser's perspective, that products will be best sold using central route to persuasion. What audience would likely be influenced to buy the product? One example is buying a computer. It's likely, for example, that small business owners might be especially influenced by the focus on the computer's quality and features such as processing speed and memory capacity. We have perceived authority. From earliest childhood, we learn to rely on authority figures for sound decision making because their authority signifies status and power, as well as expertise. These two facets often work together. We have honesty, it's a moral dimension of trustworthiness. Persuasion professionals have long understood how critical it is in their efforts, and marketers, for example, dedicate exorbitant resources to developing and maintaining the image of honesty. Likability: people tend to favor products that are associated with the people they like. This key ingredient to celebrity endorsements. We have source credibility. It means consumers perceive the source or spokesperson as an expert who's an objective and trustworthy. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. A credible source will provide information on competing products, not just one product, to help the consumer make more informed choice. Source attractiveness refers to the source's perceived social value, not just their physical appearance. High social value comes partly from physical attractiveness, but also from personality, social status, or similarly to the receiver. We like to listen to people who are like us, which is why typical consumers are effective when they endorse everyday products. So when we think about source attractiveness, it's important to keep in mind that attractiveness is not just physical beauty. The advertising is most effective isn't necessarily that we pairs a Hollywood idol with the product. Indeed, one study found that many students were more convinced by endorsement from a fictional fellow student than a celebrity. As we researched, the students like to make their own product is fashionable and trendy among people who resemble them, rather than approved by celebrities like David Beckham or Brad Pitt or Scarlett Johansson. So they're equal. There's a lot of evidence that physically attractive people are more stance. For our culture, like many others, there's a bias towards good-looking people that teaches more likely to possess other desirable traits as well. Researchers call this the world beautiful is good hypothesis. Matchup hypothesis: for celebrity campaigns to be effective, endorsement must have clear and popular image. In addition, celebrity's image and that of product they endorse should be similar. Researchers refer to this as a matchup hypothesis. A market research company developed a widely used measure called the Q score. Q stands for quality. To decide if a celebrity will make a good endorser, the score involves level of familiarity with the name and the number of respondents who indicate that person, program, or character is favorite. Celebrity endorsements are a frequent feature in commercial aimed at children. The practice has aroused considerable ethical concern, and research shows concern is warranted. In a study founded by Federal Trade Commission, more than 400 children ages 8 to 14 were shown in various commercials in the model racing set. Some of the commercials featured an endorsement from a famous race driver. Some included real racing footage, and others included neither. Children who watched Celebrity Endorser not only preferred the toy cars more, but they were convinced Endorser was the expert over the toy. This held true for children of all ages. In addition, they believed the toy race cars were bigger, faster, and more complex than real race cars they saw on film. They were also less likely to believe the commercial was staged. Star power. Star power is best to be explained like this. If a famous person believes a product is good, you believe it too. For advertising to be effective, however, the connection between a product and celebrity should be clear. When Louis Vuitton featured Emmaneul in Vogue, the tie was not clear. Why would association with former Soviet leader be brought to the end of communism and promote a consumer to buy a luxury brand bag? The framework is effective because celebrities embody cultural meaning. They symbolize important categories such as status and social class. The working class heroes such as Peter Griffin on Family Guy gender, tough women such as Nancy in the Weeds, or personality types like nerdy, but earners, hero, and heroes. Ideally, the advertiser decides what meanings a product should convey. That is how they should position the item in the marketplace, and choose a celebrity who embodies similar meaning. The product's meaning thus moves from manufacturer to consumer using the star as a vehicle. The halo effect. Armed with positive information about a person that we tend to assume and other positive qualities is called a halo effect. If a person is really nice, we will assume that they are attractive and intelligent. If they're rude, we're going to see them as unintelligent or unattractive. The effect creates a type of cognitive bias, and marketers know this. This is where a favorable attitude towards brand products. There's a good chance the same attitude would be extended in the brand's other products or even future product lines. The same can be said with celebrity endorser. If we have a favorable attitude towards a particular celebrity or athlete, then we endorse that product, and there's a good chance we'll have a favorable attitude towards the product they're endorsing. The balanced theory of attitudes. For his Hines, the balanced theory is a conceptual framework that demonstrates how consistency as the motivational force predicts attitude of change in behavior. The model can be used to predict behavior of consumers in situations where celebrity endorsements may be involved. If audience consumers have favorable attitude towards a celebrity or perceive that celebrity to be a particular brand communicated through endorsement deal, the consumer is most likely to develop positive attitude toward the brand, thus providing balance between all these components in the triad. Consumer, celebrity, and brand, however, as a balance can occur if the consumer develops a dislike toward the celebrity due to scandal. It could result in the same negative attitude extended to the brand if they continue to maintain positive ties with the celebrity. Many brands will drop a celebrity in order to maintain a positive relationship with consumers. We have reciprocity, social proof, commitment, consistency, a door in the face. And of course, that's not all. Maybe the sunken cost trap, scarcity, psychological. Maybe you think there's not going to be any more left, so you have to go get it. Okay, just a little review here. You can look at the elaboration likelihood model presented in central persuasion that can help you out with the message. Attitudes can be an uphill battle for marketers, especially if you have some negative publicity or your competitors overpowering the situation. All right, so that's that for today. Thank you so much, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.